Hey everyone, today I want to talk about a big part of decluttering I think people are missing. I know this is something that I've realized has been a cause of clutter for me in the past, and it's something that I'm continuing to grapple with. So I'm sharing this in hopes that you don't make the same mistakes I do and that you can be catapulted into a later stage of the decluttering process by knowing about this now. In previous videos on this channel, I've talked about the first few steps to start to pursue minimalism. I'll link some relevant content above and in the description box below. But basically, I've talked about the importance of starting decluttering in an area that will have a big impact on you. Wherever it is that you tend to spend a lot of your time, tackle that area first so that you can pretty quickly experience the positive impact of decluttering on your life. I definitely think that once I cleared out that main living area and my kitchen, it was so much easier to put things away. I just had more space. The area felt less stressful and more relaxing. So while I do agree with that sentiment that having high impact declutters early on is really important in gaining that momentum, I also think there's another high priority area that I haven't really discussed much on this channel before. And it's a concept that has been kind of bouncing around in the back of my mind. And then it kind of came to a head when I was recently rereading portions of Goodbye Things by Fumio Sasaki, where he talks about this concept in a more crystallized way. The problem with starting with just decluttering the areas that are high impact, that are visual, that you see a lot, is that it doesn't actually address the underlying organism of the clutter. It's like a nest. If you need to exterminate something, you don't just occasionally get rid of the bug that comes out into your visual area. There's a nest there, maybe even hidden away somewhere, that if you don't address, it's just going to breed more problems. And also, if we only ever declutter the visual areas of our home, then the clutter will eventually just re-emerge. You need to look and think, where is the breeding ground for my clutter? Where does it tend to build up and expand over time in this kind of organic way? I think most of us probably have these zones in our home where we just have a spot to put things when we don't know what to do with them. And I want to be transparent here that I think lately I've actually started to redevelop these kind of nest zones in my home without fully realizing it, even though I'm pursuing minimalism, even though I'm doing regular declutters. Sometimes I end up just putting things down in the basement or in my back closet, and I don't fully address them. I have to say, I recently decluttered a back closet in the back bedroom of our home that had started to build up some clutter again. And then it was so nice when it was mostly cleared out and there was just this content closet that I can go to and put away things when I need to. I just think it's way better to clear out these storage spaces a little bit more so that there's a space to put things that are kind of in that in-between space where you're debating on whether to declutter them or not, and you're just setting them there to see if you reach for them or to use them. I really do think that has been a great way to declutter for me, is to have this kind of like maybe pile that I put in a particular place and have a date where I come back and revisit that pile and then donate what I want to donate, rid myself of the things I don't want. But if I don't have a space for that maybe pile, and if I don't have a space for that maybe pile where it's easily accessible and where I know exactly where it is, it becomes really difficult to keep the momentum of decluttering going. And so by clearing out the nest of your clutter, all that storage space, all that storage stuff that we don't really need, I think you will suddenly bound leaps ahead in your decluttering journey because it's just easier, it's less overwhelming. Even if your whole space looks nice on a particular day, if you have that nest building up behind closed doors, it's always there in the back of your mind, reminding you, you gotta do this. You're not getting there yet. And it's something I've been grappling with lately because I do think there are a couple zones still in my home that I need to get through, and I'm going to be honest about that. But as I've begun to go back through these areas, I'm feeling lighter and happier, and things are just easier. Putting things away is easier. Having a maybe pile is easier, and therefore decluttering overall is easier. Now, I also want to acknowledge that sometimes it's hard to get the inertia to really tackle those nest zones. So many people in the US have big storage facilities full of stuff. It's really a norm. often not even that much of an exception to have a lot of extra stuff lying around. Like, we really do as a society, at least here in the US, have so much stuff. You don't need to self-stigmatize. You don't need to be down on yourself for having these nests. A lot of us have them. And it's also understandable that it just feels overwhelming to get started with clearing out those nests. But I think it's important to keep in mind what an impact it could have on your life if you decide to tackle those areas. And sometimes those areas, while tedious and cumbersome and challenging, might not be as difficult or time-consuming as you might think. And depending on how big the nest is, I think it's helpful to break it down into bite-sized, doable pieces. But if you approach that nest in a thoughtful, organized, scheduled, self-compassionate way, decluttering that nest can actually feel really, really good. And there is nothing like that feeling of having a before and after picture and just seeing the high impact of your work of decluttering. It really is so satisfying. I know every time I do a declutter, I feel so much better afterwards, and it actually gives me energy. So if you're someone who has some kind of breeding ground for clutter, has that big storage facility that you're not seeing all the time, it's in the back of your mind all the time, but you're not addressing it, maybe it's time to get rid of that avoidance and just jump in, because sometimes the avoidance actually makes it worse. There's so much research to suggest that avoidance actually leads to more anxiety. The more you avoid, the more anxiety you experience. So if you can just decide, I'm going to tackle this little bit of my clutter nest and gradually chip away at it, you can really address the underlying cause of the clutter in your home. If there are barriers to addressing that clutter nest, what are they for you? Is it anxiety around how much effort it will take? Is it figuring out how to get rid of the stuff or the best way to get rid of the stuff? I think if we just really face head on what we're anxious about, then it's going to be easier as we go through it. I think it's that kind of like mental avoidance. Sometimes I totally do this where I'm not actually facing why I'm anxious about taking on a particular decluttering task, but when I actually sit down and think, this is why I'm anxious about it, I'm really recognizing why I'm worried about it, what's getting in the way for me, and then I'm able to tackle it head on. So this video is just a simple point that don't just do the spots that are super visual, but address the underlying cause of that clutter. The clutter nest is a huge part of that, I think, and it can be really impactful in your decluttering process. If any of you have worries or trepidations about addressing that clutter nest, or if you have addressed the clutter nest and you've had experience with it, feel free to share those experiences in the comments below. I love hearing from all the people in this community. I often learn so much from your comments. I really appreciate them. And also for those of you who are new here, I feel like I haven't introduced myself in a while. My name is Aylin, and I make regular videos about minimalism and building an empowering mindset. If that type of content is interesting to you, I have well over 70 videos at this point. So if you enjoyed this video and want to see more, feel free to click the subscribe button below. And if you enjoyed this video, please hit the thumbs up button. Doing those things really supports the channel. And if you're a more regular viewer and you want to get more content, feel free to join my Patreon community below. It's a great way to support me and the channel. I'm so grateful for those of you who have joined me there. You know who you are. And I also recently started a new Instagram account. I'll link that below as well. Anyway, that's enough of that. Thanks so much for taking the time to watch this video, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye.